Have you ever noticed that some Bible stories sound simple when we hear them as children, but when life hits hard, those same stories suddenly feel completely different? You read them again after heartbreak, betrayal, failure, loneliness, fear, or disappointment, and you realize you never truly understood what those people were carrying. Some of us grew up hearing these stories in church like bedtime stories, but we never stopped long enough to feel the pain, confusion, fear, and humanity inside them. We heard about giants falling, seas opening, and miracles happening, but we missed the tears behind those moments. We missed the waiting seasons. We missed the silence. We missed the moments where people in the Bible probably felt abandoned, exhausted, and emotionally drained just like we do today. That is why so many people feel disconnected from Scripture, because they think Bible characters were superhuman, when in reality they were broken people trying to trust God one painful day at a time. And maybe that is exactly where you are right now. Maybe you love God, but you are tired. Maybe you pray, but you still feel anxious. Maybe you believe, but you still have questions you are scared to say out loud. The beautiful thing about the Bible is that it never hides human weakness. It shows people who doubted, cried, failed, ran away, got angry, and still experienced the grace of God. Think about Noah for a second. Most people remember the ark and the animals, but very few talk about how crazy Noah must have looked while building something enormous before rain had ever even fallen the way people knew it. Imagine people laughing at him every single day. Imagine the loneliness of obeying God while everybody around you thinks you are foolish. Some of you watching this know exactly what that feels like. You are trying to change your life, walk away from sin, stay faithful, build something meaningful, heal emotionally, or trust God for your future, and people around you mock you because they cannot see what God showed you. Noah's story was never just about surviving a flood. It was about remaining obedient when nobody understands your assignment. That hits differently when you are the one carrying a burden nobody else believes in. And the truth is, many people quit before the rain comes because they get tired of looking foolish. But Noah kept building. He kept trusting. He kept obeying. Some of you need to hear this deeply today. Just because people do not understand what God is doing in your life does not mean God is absent. Sometimes obedience feels lonely before it feels rewarding. Sometimes faith looks ridiculous before it becomes powerful. And honestly, that is one of the hardest parts of following God, because we secretly want immediate proof, immediate comfort, and immediate results. But God often works in seasons where all you can do is keep building the ark while the sky still looks clear. That is the part of the story people rarely talk about. But that is the part that changes lives. And then there is David and Goliath, a story almost everybody thinks they know. Most people hear that story and immediately think it is about defeating giants, but the deeper truth is about identity, insecurity, and hidden preparation. David was overlooked long before he faced Goliath. He was the forgotten son. When the prophet came to Jesse's house looking for the next king, David was not even invited into the room. Think about how painful that is. Imagine everybody around you being seen while you are ignored. Some of you know that feeling too well. You feel invisible in your family, your workplace, your relationships, or even your church. People celebrate others while acting like you have nothing valuable to offer. But what makes David's story powerful is that God saw him while others overlooked him. And before David ever faced Goliath publicly, he fought private battles nobody clapped for. He fought lions and bears when nobody was watching. That is something this generation desperately needs to understand, because everybody wants visible victory without hidden preparation. We want the crown without the wilderness. We want the platform without the process. We want recognition without character being built first. But David's courage against Goliath did not appear overnight. It was developed in lonely seasons where nobody noticed his faithfulness. And honestly, that is where many people give up. They think hidden seasons mean forgotten seasons, but hidden seasons are often training seasons. God does some of his deepest work in private. Another thing people miss is that David refused to wear Saul's armor. That matters more than people realize. Saul tried to make David fight like somebody else instead of embracing who God created him to be. And so many people today are exhausted because they keep trying to wear armor that does not fit. They copy everybody else on social media. They imitate other people's personalities, dreams, lifestyles, and callings because they are scared their authentic self is not enough. But David won because he embraced the tools God already gave him. Some of you are praying for different gifts while ignoring the strength God already placed inside you. And another thing that hits hard is that Goliath was loud. Giants are always loud. Fear is loud. Anxiety is loud. Insecurity is loud. Negative thoughts are loud. But faith often sounds quiet at first. David walked toward a giant everybody else ran from because he believed God was bigger than public opinion, bigger than fear, and bigger than intimidation. That is a message people desperately need today, because many are silently losing battles before they even begin simply because fear convinced them they were already defeated. Now let us talk about Jonah, because people usually reduce his story to a man being swallowed by a fish. But the deeper story is about running from God, emotional resistance, and internal struggle. Jonah was not just running away physically. He was running emotionally. He did not want to do what God asked him to do because he hated the people God wanted to save. That part is uncomfortable because it exposes something real about human nature. Sometimes we want mercy for ourselves but judgment for others. Sometimes we struggle when God shows compassion to people we feel do not deserve it. Jonah's story reveals how bitterness can quietly harden the heart. And honestly, many believers today are emotionally exhausted because they are running from things God is asking them to face. Some are running from purpose because they feel unqualified. Some are running from healing because pain feels familiar. Some are running from forgiveness because anger feels safer. Some are running from change because comfort zones feel secure even when they are unhealthy. And the scary thing about running from God is that you can still look functional on the outside while being spiritually disconnected on the inside. Jonah got on a ship thinking distance could silence God's calling, but you cannot outrun purpose forever. Eventually the storm comes. And many people hate storms without realizing some storms are wake-up calls. Some storms expose what comfort has been hiding. Some storms force you to confront things you have avoided for years. What is powerful about Jonah's story is that even in rebellion, God still pursued him. That is grace. God did not abandon Jonah in the ocean. God met him in the middle of his mess. Some of you watching this feel like you have messed up too badly for God to still use you. But Jonah's story destroys that lie completely. Even after disobedience, fear, resistance, and frustration, God still gave Jonah another chance. And honestly, that should make somebody emotional, because there are people listening right now who feel ashamed of their past, ashamed of their habits, ashamed of their failures, and ashamed of how far they drifted spiritually. But the story of Jonah reminds us that God is still willing to call imperfect people. The fish was not just punishment. In many ways, it was protection. And sometimes what feels like the worst season of your life is actually the place where God is keeping you alive long enough to transform you. The story of Mary and Martha also hits differently when you grow older, because most people think it is simply about one sister being busy while the other sat with Jesus. But the deeper truth is about comparison, emotional burnout, and feeling unseen. Martha was working hard. She was serving. She was trying to do everything right. And honestly, many people watching this are just like Martha. You are constantly carrying responsibilities. You are always helping everybody else. You are always solving problems, showing up, fixing situations, and taking care of people while secretly feeling overwhelmed inside. Martha was frustrated because she felt alone in her burden. That feeling is real. Some people look strong publicly while privately begging for rest emotionally. And what hurts even more is when you feel like nobody notices how much pressure you carry. Martha finally exploded emotionally and asked Jesus if he even cared. That sentence reveals something deep, because exhausted people often start questioning whether God sees them at all. Some of you have prayed similar prayers silently. God, do you even see how tired I am? Do you even care how much I am carrying? Do you see how lonely this feels? And the beautiful thing is that Jesus responded with compassion instead of condemnation. He was not attacking Martha for serving. He was addressing the anxiety consuming her heart. There is a difference. Many people today are physically present but emotionally absent because stress stole their peace. They are constantly productive but spiritually drained. They wake up already anxious. They go to sleep mentally exhausted. Their minds never rest. And in a world addicted to busyness, the story of Mary and Martha becomes more relevant than ever. Jesus was showing that intimacy with God matters more than constantly proving your worth through performance. Some people are trying so hard to earn love, validation, and acceptance through endless activity. But your value was never meant to come from exhaustion. Another painful truth in this story is that comparison destroys peace quickly. Martha looked at Mary and became resentful. Comparison still ruins people today. Social media made this even worse because now people compare their appearance, success, relationships, healing journey, finances, and spiritual life every single day. And comparison quietly convinces people they are falling behind in life. But God never asked Martha to become Mary. He simply wanted Martha to slow down enough to reconnect her heart. That message is needed badly today because many people are surviving physically while collapsing emotionally inside. When people think about Peter walking on water, they usually focus on the miracle itself, but the deeper lesson is about fear, impulsiveness, failure, and grace. Peter was bold enough to step out of the boat while others stayed comfortable. That already says something powerful. Many people criticize those who fail publicly while forgetting they never had the courage to step out at all. Peter sank, yes, but at least he moved. At least he tried. Some of you are terrified of making mistakes, so you never pursue anything meaningful. You never start the business, apply for the opportunity, speak up, create content, heal emotionally, or take faith seriously because fear of failure controls your life. But Peter's story reminds us that imperfect faith still moves God. And honestly, that is comforting because many people think they need perfect confidence before taking a step. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving while afraid. Peter started sinking when he focused more on the storm than on Jesus. That hits hard because many people are drowning mentally right now because they stare at problems all day long. They constantly focus on what could go wrong, what they lost, what they fear, and what they cannot control. Fear grows wherever attention stays fixed. Another thing people overlook is that Jesus immediately reached for Peter when he began sinking. Immediately. Not after Peter proved himself worthy again. Not after Peter apologized enough. Jesus reached for him in the middle of failure. Some of you need that reminder because you think one mistake ruined your relationship with God forever. But God is not waiting for you to become flawless before extending grace. Peter also denied Jesus later, which makes his story even more emotional. Imagine failing publicly after promising loyalty confidently. Some people know that pain personally. They promised themselves they would never go back to certain habits, fears, addictions, or toxic patterns, and yet they fell again. Peter understood what it felt like to disappoint himself deeply. But what makes the gospel beautiful is that failure was not Peter's ending. Jesus restored him. And maybe somebody listening today needs to hear this deeply. Your worst moment does not have to define your entire future. One failure does not cancel God's purpose for your life. One mistake does not erase your value. Peter's story is powerful because it proves God still works through imperfect people who keep coming back to Him honestly. The story of Joseph becomes incredibly emotional when you stop seeing it as just a success story and start seeing it as a story about betrayal, waiting, and emotional endurance. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers. Think about that pain carefully. The people closest to him became the source of his deepest wound. Some of you understand that heartbreak because your biggest pain did not come from strangers. It came from people you trusted deeply. Family betrayal cuts differently. Friendship betrayal cuts differently. Relationship betrayal cuts differently. Joseph was thrown into a pit before he ever reached the palace. That detail matters because many people want destiny without discomfort. But some pits become preparation places. Still, let us be honest. Waiting seasons are emotionally exhausting. Joseph had dreams from God, yet his reality looked nothing like the promise for years. Some people watching this are struggling with that exact tension. You believed God for healing, breakthrough, restoration, opportunities, or purpose, but life keeps looking worse instead of better. Joseph experienced false accusations, isolation, disappointment, and forgotten seasons. Imagine helping people while your own prayers seem unanswered. Imagine interpreting dreams for others while your own future remains unclear. That is emotionally draining. Another thing people overlook is that Joseph had every reason to become bitter. Bitterness would have been understandable. Somehow he kept his heart open to God. And that is one of the hardest spiritual battles people face, because pain naturally tempts people toward cynicism. After enough disappointment, people stop trusting. They stop hoping. They stop expecting goodness. Some even stop praying honestly because they are tired of feeling let down. But Joseph's story reminds us that delays are not always denials. Sometimes God is building strength in hidden seasons that later becomes necessary for your calling. And perhaps the most powerful moment in Joseph's story is when he finally sees the brothers who hurt him. He had power now. He could have chosen revenge, but instead he chose forgiveness. That does not mean the pain vanished. Forgiveness does not erase scars overnight. But Joseph realized bitterness would imprison him emotionally longer than the pit ever did physically. Some viewers desperately need freedom from bitterness because resentment is exhausting. Carrying old pain for years slowly hardens the heart. Joseph's story teaches us that healing is possible even after betrayal, but healing usually takes time, tears, honesty, and surrender. The story of the woman at the well is another story many people think they know, but it becomes deeply personal when you understand shame and emotional thirst. This woman came to the well at a time when fewer people would be around because she was avoiding judgment. That detail matters. Shame makes people hide. Some people watching this constantly hide emotionally. They hide their struggles behind smiles. They hide their loneliness behind humor. They hide their insecurity behind confidence. They hide their pain behind productivity. And the exhausting part about shame is that it convinces people they are unworthy of love, connection, and acceptance. This woman had been through multiple relationships, and society labeled her because of it. People probably talked about her constantly. Some of you know what it feels like to carry labels people placed on you. Maybe people define you by your mistakes, your past, your failures, your addiction, your divorce, your weakness, or your lowest season. Jesus approached her with compassion instead of condemnation. That changes everything. Religion often pushed broken people away, but Jesus moved toward them. And notice this carefully. Jesus did not just address her behavior. He addressed her deeper thirst. That is powerful because many unhealthy patterns in life are connected to deeper emotional emptiness. Some people chase relationships because they feel unloved. Some chase money because they feel insecure. Some chase validation because they feel unseen. Some chase attention because they feel insignificant. People try to fill spiritual emptiness with temporary things constantly, but temporary things can never permanently heal internal wounds. That is why so many people still feel empty even after getting what they thought would satisfy them. The woman at the well teaches us that only God truly reaches the deepest parts of the human heart. Another emotional part of this story is how quickly her identity changed after encountering Jesus. The woman who once hid became bold enough to tell others about him. Healing often restores confidence slowly. When people encounter real grace, they stop living completely controlled by shame. And maybe somebody watching this needs that reminder today. Your past is not the final chapter of your life. God still sees value in you even when others only see your mistakes. That truth alone can change somebody's entire life. And finally, the story of the prodigal son is probably one of the most misunderstood emotional stories in the Bible because people usually focus only on the rebellion. But the deeper story is about identity, pride, brokenness, forgiveness, and the heart of the father. The younger son wanted freedom without responsibility. He wanted blessings without relationship. And honestly, many people today live exactly like that. They want the benefits of God without surrendering their hearts fully. The son believed life away from the father would satisfy him more. But eventually pleasure ran out, money disappeared, and reality hit hard. Sin often looks exciting at first but leaves emptiness later. And what really breaks people emotionally is the moment the son realized how far he had fallen. Pride collapsed. Confidence disappeared. He became desperate. Some viewers understand that feeling deeply because life humbled them painfully. Maybe you thought certain choices would fulfill you, but instead you ended up emotionally empty, anxious, depressed, disconnected, or spiritually lost. The beautiful part of the story is that the son decided to return home even while carrying shame. That takes courage because shame tells people to stay hidden forever. But the father ran toward him before he could even finish his speech. That image is one of the most powerful pictures of God's heart in the entire Bible. God is not standing far away waiting to humiliate broken people. He moves toward repentant hearts with compassion. Some people listening right now genuinely believe God is tired of them, disappointed in them, or finished with them completely. But the prodigal son's story destroys that fear. The father celebrated his return. And another detail people miss is the older brother. The older brother stayed physically close to the father while still carrying bitterness internally. That matters because some people are outwardly religious while inwardly resentful, judgmental, cold, and disconnected emotionally. The story reveals that lostness can happen both far from home and inside the house. That is why this parable still speaks to people today, because everybody relates to someone in the story. Some relate to the prodigal. Some relate to the older brother. Some relate to the father waiting in love. But the biggest message is this: God's grace is bigger than human failure. No matter how far somebody wandered, mercy still has the final word. And maybe that is exactly what somebody watching this needed to hear today. Before you leave, I just want you to remember something deeply tonight. These Bible stories were never meant to be distant fairy tales about perfect people. They were written for real people with real pain, real fears, real struggles, and real questions. That is why they still hit our hearts today. Somewhere in these stories, we all find pieces of ourselves. Some of you feel like David fighting silent battles nobody understands. Some of you feel like Jonah running from things you are scared to face. Some of you feel like Martha carrying emotional exhaustion nobody notices. Some of you feel like the prodigal son trying to find your way back home after making painful mistakes. But through every story, one message keeps repeating over and over again. God does not give up on broken people. And honestly, that should give every single one of us hope. So if this video spoke to your heart in any way, do not just scroll away and forget it. Take these lessons with you into your everyday life. And I would really love to hear from you in the comments. Which Bible story changed the way you see your own life the most? Your story could encourage somebody else who feels alone right now. Also, if you enjoy honest, deep, relatable teachings about God, faith, healing, purpose, and real-life struggles, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because this channel is becoming a safe place for people who want something deeper than surface-level motivation. There are so many powerful conversations we are still going to have together, and trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming next. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for opening your heart. And until the next video, keep trusting God even in the seasons that do not make sense yet. Sometimes the stories you thought you already knew are the very stories God uses to heal you the most.